Thank you so much, Mr. Tahadza. Thank you all the Rotarians who are here. And thank you, Mr. President. So my name is Nyazungu, like what I've said, and I'm also known as the Chartered Vendor. So my story started from Watomba, because I was born and bred in Watomba, which is actually 40 kilometers from Mutare. So I started off with like a normal kid going to rural schools, and I went to a boarding school called Maristu Brothers, and I went to Hartsville. But after that, things changed. Why did things change? Because that's when things got bad around 2003, 2004. Inflation started causing havoc. My father was a civil servant and my mother was just a housewife. So things turned very bad to the extent that for us to go to the growth point, I had to actually wait for my brother, because we couldn't go, both of us at the growth point, because we're sharing one trousers. So I said to myself, I want to be I can be a temporary teacher like anybody was actually doing that time. So I started going for trying to get a temporary teaching position until I got it at Nyazungu Secondary School, which is in Zindi, Onde Valley. When I was at Zindi, Onde Valley, I read the newspaper. It was a very old newspaper. You know, that was the time when people would keep a newspaper for 2-3 months because it was so valuable. Information was shared through a newspaper. Unlike right now, whereby we're now sharing information through WhatsApp, Facebook. So I got this newspaper, and it was saying, from a tea boy to the Reserve Bank governor. This was the story of Dr. Gideon Gono. And when I read this story, that was my first time hearing that someone can actually can be a Reserve Bank governor without going to the university. So I said, okay, because all this time my teachers taught me that you are supposed to be going to university for you to be someone in life. So it was first time hearing about this. When I read the story, I was so motivated, to the extent that I also said, I want to do CIS like Dr. Gono. So I said to myself, I started doing CIS at the school, and I noticed that I didn't have a lot of chances of being successful whilst I was at the school. I had to say, no, I want to get into Harare. So I told my mom that, no, I need to get to Harare. And my mom actually said, do you have a relative in Harare? I said, try to find someone where I can stay. Two, she had to find my uncle, and to go and stay in Glenview 1. You know, that's a relationship which you have to really explain and expatiate to really see where the relationship is. That's where I started staying, and I'm grateful to them because they are the ones who actually got me into Harare. You know, my first time in Harare, I would only identify when I was lost. My mom actually said, there's a big tall building at RBZ, and that's where Dr. Gono was as well. So whenever I was lost, I would go back to the Reserve Bank building. So after when I got into Harare, I was so fortunate. My first week, I got a job at a company called Edgar's, and I worked at Edgar's for about 8 months. And after the 8 months, they said your contract is expired, and I'd done nothing wrong, and they had also done nothing wrong because shops were empty. That's when the time of inflation, I think our inflation was at around 1,556 that time. And I can see we don't have any more 2,000, so it's easy to explain. We were using bearer checks that time, and zeros would keep on reappearing, and Dr. Gono would find ways to cancel them until probably in 2008 when he was tired of canceling the zeros. So in 2006, exactly June, that's when my contract expired. And I was also, when my contract it expired, my uncles didn't know that my contract had expired since I had not shared with them. And I had bought a mattress and a very old stove. I still remember that stove. For me to operate that stove, I had to wear sandals, which they used to call yellow pushes. Even if it was blue or brown, they used to call it yellow pushes. And some they'll call it BMW. In Shona actually means Budimuri Wanga. That's what it meant that time. And so just the end of June 2006, when I got, when contract expired, my uncle also said, I think when you can now afford to buy a mattress, and I think when you can now afford to buy a stove, you're supposed to start staying on your own. So I was also fired where I was staying that same month. And that's the time when finding somewhere to stay, you could, when you just find somewhere to rent, people would congratulate you, because why? We had no Damafos, we had no Mabazua, we had no Madokeros. So finding where to stay, it was very difficult. And I ended up staying with Ambuya Tendai. Why I got a place at Ambuya Tendai's place, it was because the lady was so strict, to the extent that she was treating me like her own child. She gave me a lot of rules. Amongst them, I was supposed to water a garden, clean toilets, clean her dining, make sure after watering the garden, she would also sell the vegetables to you, and she would say, I'm old, where do you think I'll get the money from? Then at Edgar's, they gave me 9.5 million bearer checks. This wasn't a lot of money. One airtime card that time was $500,000, and one loaf of bread was $80,000. So when I got this money, the 4 million, I had to pay my rentals, and the other 4 million, I had to start a business. And this business was vending. That's why he was actually calling me the chartered vendor. That's when the vending story started. So my first, I started by selling airtime. Would buy airtime, would only buy 8 cards because I had only 4 million as my capital. And I started selling. The first month I was selling airtime. It was very tough. And why I chose airtime? Because it was a bit lucrative vending, since only 10% of the population had phones. So selling airtime was better vending than selling bananas. But after a month, I was now used to vending, and I started selling anything, including cigarettes, sweets, donuts. I think even that time we could even sell people. But so that's what happened, and I started vending, and vending was very tough. Because as a vendor, I got arrested more than 50 times. Because why? I had 50 yellow copies of paying fine at city council or at the police. And I was also beaten 40 cuts under my foot when I ran away with airtime. That was around 2008. And sometimes would actually survive through eating leftovers. When someone when they chew sugarcane, the leftovers. And after some days, they would turn sweet and would take that and would actually eat that as vendors. So things were very tough. But when I was a vendor, I used to read a lot as a vendor, and my fellow vendors used to ask me, why are you reading? Things are tough. This economy is never going to change. When you're educated, you're nothing in this economy. Then I say to them, and that was the height of politics. People used to say a lot of politics, and I used to say, guys, we are in a war, and the war which we are in, it has got nothing to do with politics, but it is something to do with economy. So I got so passionate about fighting for me to survive, and I even told one of my fellow vendors, who is still a vendor up to now, and is actually selling in front of Stanbic, Samora Machel, and I told him that you should look at me in the next 10 years. I won't be a vendor. I would have actually changed my life. So that was the sort of vending until when it was 2009, when I got into the industry as a bookkeeper, since I had Part B CIS, and I had to finish my CIS, and I became a chartered secretary in 2012. Then in 2014, I started a company called M&J. So M&J, it's a business consultants firm which deals with a lot of consultants issues from company secretarial, accounting, softwares, etc. And currently we're actually based here in Harare, and we are also in Lusaka, employing about 70 youths, because I think I'm the oldest in the company. And most of these guys are very young, and they're doing amazing stuff. You're opening small businesses, medium and large business. But my question to you guys, it's I like when the President of America actually said, no donations to Africa. I liked it. Why? It makes Africans think. Because Africans, we like more to do with, we like foreign aid. We like foreign investments? When are we going to start respecting the local investors? When are we going to start respecting the local donors? When are we going to start ourselves to be the donors? So I say to him, when he said it, I say thumbs up. This is what is going to make Africans think. But just like most of the Africans, we are very good at excuses. We are very good at saying things are tough. So I say to myself, what can we actually do to make entrepreneurship thrive in Africa? So I'm also an author. I've written my story, The Chartered Vendor. So why the chartered is small and the vendor is big? I'm simply saying I got more experience from the streets than what I got from school. Then I've written also a book called Selling Like a Vendor, because what I noticed is most of the people in Africa, we don't like to sell. Then I've also written a book for Sales Equals to Love Relationships. This is my third book. Then my fourth book, which I'm going to be talking about, is called Why Companies Fail in Africa. And as a consultant for the last 10 years, I've actually noticed that companies are not failing because of politics. Companies are not failing because of the economy. Some of these companies which are there because the economy is bad. If you're going to notice, most of these small to medium enterprises, they were never going to thrive if international players were there. So thanks to the economy, they're in existence. But the real elephant in the room is because we are failing because of internal factors. You know, Africans, we like early gratification. When you've got a company, you want to drive a big car. You want to own a building. But you see, big companies will be renting whilst you're owning a building. That's a mistake which is there in my book, because I noticed that most of the companies have collapsed because they want to show people that I now have 10 branches. When they are now giving their testimonies in churches, they want to say, I'm employing 10,000 employees. But of those 10,000, only 1,000 are actually productive. That's a mistake which is happening to African entrepreneurs. African entrepreneurs are very good at making excuses. Right now, if you get into any gathering, it's always about, if the economy was good, I was supposed to be doing good. If the economy was going to be good, if the economy was going to be good. But when we started these businesses, the economy was already bad. And as an entrepreneur, we are there to actually solve problems. So why are we crying that the economy is actually bad? So that's another. I've actually written 33 reasons why African businesses are not thriving. If you also notice, we like, as Africans, authorizing everything. You see a CEO authorizing $5 fuel. Are you getting it? They want to sign. Everything has to go through them, including even just a normal leave has to go to leave. Your chef wants to go for a leave day. You are the one who is also authorizing everything. That's why you notice that with famous bus companies, which were there in the 80s, which were there in the 90s, where are they right now? It's because everything was centered on them. But us as Africans now, we believe that those businesses were thriving because of juju. No, it's because they didn't have systems. So I'm also challenging even the Rotary Club itself. It's supposed to have systems. We're supposed to, right now, you guys, there is new blood which is coming in. They don't know what to do because everything was being done manually. Everything wasn't being recorded. There's no system which was created. That's why businesses in Africa are actually failing. Look at it, what is happening. Africa has got a lot of resources. Africa has got a lot of educated people. I know Africans try to call my fellow doctor there, ma'am. She'll say, no, can call me doc. I'm joking. She likes actually to be called Chipo. But anyway, what I'm simply saying is Africans with titles, with our education, with all our resources, why are we suffering? It's because we haven't changed the mindset. Look at where China was in 1978. China was so deliberate about their change. Look at where China is right now. China is now almost overtaking America. That's why you see right now the president of America is making all these changes, because he noticed that China is about to overtake them. They've actually said in 2030, according to the HBC report, China will be having 50 million millionaires in China, whilst we are suffering.
But if you notice in Africa, we like resting. Get into town on Saturday, get into town on Sunday. You can think that this is actually a world-class economy because we'll be resting, but we are a suffering economy. That's where the problem is, because we don't want to work hard. We don't want to work for long hours. Look at it when Chinese, they get into countries like Zimbabwe, into countries like Zambia. They hardly go for holidays. They hardly go to see big falls. But us, when you go to the foreign land, we like visiting each and every holiday resort which is in America, each and every holiday resort which is in Britain, promoting them. Look, when a Chinese visit Africa, what they actually do, you see, they stay in dormitories. I've got one of a multi-million Chinese, is my client. I asked him one day, why are you sleeping on a hard bed? And they actually said, I didn't come here to sleep. I'm just sleeping because it's nature. I come here to look for money. I come here to fight for China. And if you look for it right now as you speak, you will never see a Chinese condemning his country. But what you see is Africans who are busy condemning their country. Africans who are busy saying our country is the West. So how are we going to be changing as Africans? I would like to tell you a story. There was a camp. There was a military camp. And this military camp, there was a commander who was there. So they created a statue. And this statue, when it was still wet, they deployed 3 soldiers to man that statue and guard that statue. But this commander was transferred to another camp when the statue was still wet. Then, after, when he was deployed, the other guys came in and they continued guarding that statue. 3 soldiers were always put to guard that statue. After 70 years, a clever commander actually came and said, but there's nothing on this statue. Why are we still guarding this statue? And when he went into the archives, it was guarded because it was still wet. So the question is, as Africans right now, in our education system, aren't we still guarding the statue? Right now, why do we have young people who are very educated, master's degree, doctorates, but they cannot write emails? You see, right now, we're in the age of AI. Whilst actually America, they are having headlines of spaceships. Right now, we have headlines of prophets clashing somewhere. So that's why the real problem with Africa, we need to change the mindset. Are we still guarding that same statue? Are we still guarding the wet statue? Is it still relevant for us to do Pythagoras theorem at school? I don't know. Is it still relevant for us to label the locusts at school? Is it actually? Right now we need to challenge the status quo. Our education system right now as we speak, it's rewarding those who can remember, not thinkers. It's not rewarding innovators. It's actually rewarding those who can remember. So the question is, the education which we have right now is still even applicable to the current economy. That's why right now, if you look at it, our education is very good at actually producing employees. But it's the economy of Africa, the economy of Zimbabwe, does it still need employees, or it rather requires people who are going to create more jobs, even if they are working for other companies? So the thing is, aren't we still guarding statues as Africans? Aren't we still, we need to change the way we think. If we're not going to change the way we think, we're going to create a sorry state. We're going to keep on changing presidents. I'm also doing business in Zambia. Just on Saturday, do you know that as the guys who actually said it's a Women's Day, don't have a public holiday in their country. But Zambia has actually put Women's Day as a public holiday. Everyone has to rest on that day. There's Youth Day. There's a National Day of Prayer. There's all these holidays. What for? West Africa is broke. Why do we want to rest as much? Why do we want to rest when we're actually broke? So we want to go out and challenge the status quo as the business leaders, as the community leaders, to say we need to change the way we think. We need to fight for this Africa. The next generation needs us. Where are we going to have that? Remember, even when they were actually fighting the liberation struggle, there was no rest. People were actually fighting for the country. They didn't have holidays. But right now we are fighting an economic war, but we are busy holidaying. We are busy resting as Africans. So I want to challenge you guys. Aren't we guarding the statue?
That's all I can say. Thank you so much. That was a mouthful. Thank you so much. I would like to call Rotarian Michelle to thank our guest speaker. Questions? If there are any questions, maybe I'll just take one or two, because we've run out of time. Are there any questions? I'll just check in the chat section if there are any questions.
One comment, I think Jerry should join the True Story Committee.
So Tafaza is suggesting that Jerry should join the True Story Committee.
We should chat after that. I think we would make meetings after that.
There's a comment from Rosarian Toko online. She says, thank you to the chartered vendor, thought-provoking. Thank you.
Welcome.
And then from Prof. Enam, what an inspiring speaker. Pity no photo. Alright, so those are the two comments from our Rotarians online. So are there any questions? Okay, there's a question from Rotarian Talk.
Not so much a question as a comment. I'm not born as a Zimbabwean, but I've been here for 30-something years. When I arrived, it was the time of briefcase businessmen, shortage of foreign exchange, so people who had foreign exchange went and got forex and then brought things over the border. So nobody was selling anything because as soon as people got a product in, it went like hotcakes. So they didn't sell it, just had to tell everybody it was there and people would come and buy it. And it did strike me that there was very poor selling skills. I mean, people didn't know how to sell. And also the other thing that happened was that the people revered things that were imported and didn't support things that were bought locally, or things that were made locally. And that was still the end of the era when this country had to look for itself because of restrictions and everything before. So it was interesting, and we've seen things evolve since then. But I absolutely agree with you. I think to believe in the country and to do things and to get out there and sell what we're doing positively, I think it's great. So I'd like to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Jack. Doc Chief.
So my comment or question is this an African story or a people's story? Rather than to say that it's as Africans and when we go out there. Because I went to the UK and my cousins had never been to. They work like crazy. They work exactly like the Chinese work here. And they don't go to London and they don't go to see all these places, because when you're in a foreign country, there is the danger of being in a foreign country. So you're not safe, so if you go to America, the Americans will be safe. I'm not sure whether it's an African story or it's a people's story. Very encouraging, I'm very impressed and very encouraged, and I want to go out there and work. But is it more a people's story than an African story?
Okay, thank you so much, Doc. It's an African story because we are the poorest continent. So when you look at it right now, the people in the UK, they are working very, very hard to maintain where they are or even to be better. If you look at it right now, when vaccines were actually introduced during COVID, India had its own vaccine, and Chinese they had their own vaccine, the Europeans had their own vaccines, but dear Africa was waiting for all these continents. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. You can ask Rotarian Michelle to thank our guest speaker.
Jerry, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Welcome.
On behalf of President Daniel and my fellow Rotarians.
Thank you.
Thank you for the story that you've given us, the story of your life. It speaks of resilience, it speaks of fortitude, it speaks of thinking outside the box. It speaks to me of a person who looked at his life and asked himself, what do I do to make myself better? You had an education to begin with, but you also educated yourself as you came along the way. And in doing so, you started thinking differently about how you wanted your life to look like. And I think two things that Don spoke about when he talked about selling and when he talked about selling to each other. The thing that we forget is that when we stand in front of people, no matter what we do, we're selling ourselves. We're selling what it is, whatever our skills are. And we want other people to buy those skills and that, whatever it is that we're selling. But we forget that we can actually turn it into a business. And then something that Chico mentioned, the fact that we didn't require vaccines. But the point is that we wanted them. So whether we required them or not, we were looking to Europe, America, China for vaccines that we actually didn't need, but we wanted because the world wanted. So thinking outside of what the norm is what we should be looking at, rather than saying we want what everybody else wants.
Yes. Yeah? Thank you so much.
And so on behalf of our club, just a small token of appreciation.
Thank you.
For being with us this morning, for
Thank
sharing
you.
your life story.
Thank you so
and
much.
giving us something to look forward to.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.